Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, it's easy and fast.
Emma returned home after her morning workout, her cheeks still flushed. She had just finished an extraordinarily intense training session that left her brimming with energy and gave her the courage needed to voice the plan that had been swirling in her mind for days. Opening the kitchen door, she saw her husband, James, sitting with a cup of coffee and his laptop casually closed beside him. This familiar sight, one she had seen every day for 5 years, made her heart beat a little faster. At that moment, she paused briefly at the threshold, her right hand unconsciously hovering over her fitness tracker. Emma knew that if she didn't share her plan now, she might never do so. She slowly observed her husband's expression, trying to gauge if it was the right time to speak. James seemed in a good mood, which eased her nerves slightly. Taking a deep breath, Emma told James in a deliberately light tone that she was going on a 5-day vacation to California the following week. As soon as the words left her mouth, she noticed the unnatural force with which her husband sat down, his coffee mug, and the glint of something different in his eyes. That subtle shift made her heart hang in the air. "This is the first I'm hearing of it," James said calmly, but with a hint of alarm. Why the sudden decision to go to California? When Emma explained that she was going to visit Claire, a college friend who had moved to California, she deliberately avoided her husband's gaze and focused on pouring herself some water. She said she needed a short break to catch her breath. However, the silence that followed froze the air in the entire kitchen. Emma could feel her husband's stare fixed on her, as if he were trying to read all her thoughts. It was then that James said the words that nearly stopped her heart. As he wiped his hands, "I found 2 plane tickets. One of them had Ryan's name on it." Hearing those words, Emma's hand trembled slightly, and the glass of water nearly slipped from her grasp. Forcing herself to stay calm, she hurriedly explained that Ryan was her fitness instructor and that, coincidentally, he was also going to California for a fitness event. So she had bought discounted tickets for both of them. Her explanation sounded reasonable but was too quick, like a rehearsed line. James's gaze deepened, and he slowly set down his coffee mug, as if weighing every word that would come next. "You've been mentioning this Ryan a lot lately." He paused. "Tell me, Emma, are you faithful to me?" The direct question caught Emma off guard. Her face flushed instantly, and the corners of her lips forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She tried to ease the discomfort with a joking tone, saying the trip was only temporary and she didn't want to complicate things too much. When James pressed her to explain why she hadn't told him about the tickets beforehand, she used the excuse that she didn't feel the need to bother him because she knew he couldn't take time off. However, each explanation she gave seemed to deepen the suspicion in her husband's eyes. James's expression grew more serious as he pointed out that she hadn't even tried to discuss it with him and was now leaving with Ryan. He calmly said that any husband would feel disturbed hearing something like that. That calmness was more unsettling for Emma than anger. She immediately retorted that Ryan was just her trainer, that it was pure coincidence he was there, and that she was there to meet Claire. All she had to do was sunbathe, swim, and chat on the beach. It was, in fact, a normal trip. She said it with an urgent tone, as if trying to convince herself more than her husband. Finally, James let out a long sigh, with a glimmer of complexity in his eyes that Emma had never seen before. In an unusually calm tone, he said, "It's your decision. You've made your choice. So go ahead." When Emma cautiously asked if he was angry, he replied only briefly, "A man shouldn't get angry," and then left the house under the pretext of needing to go to a mechanic to replace brake pads. Watching her husband's back as he walked away, Emma felt an inexplicable pang of panic. What she didn't know was that, at that moment, James had already formulated a sophisticated plan in his mind. This plan would completely alter the trajectory of their marriage. James drove away from home, seemingly headed to a mechanic, but in reality, he had arranged to meet an old friend. While waiting at a red light, he recalled all the unusual things about his wife in recent months, the frequent overtime, the mysterious phone calls, and the intimate moments that had suddenly vanished. Now, finally, the scattered pieces were coming together to form a complete picture. His fingers tapped unconsciously on the steering wheel, and the warmth in his eyes faded. That old friend he was meeting would be the key figure in uncovering all his wife's secrets. On his way to his destination, James's heart had already made a decision, since she chose betrayal. It was up to him to write the ending of the rest of the story. The coffee shop emitted a faint aroma of espresso, and James chose a discreet corner to sit. His old friend Michael was already there waiting, with a slight professional smile on his face. This old friend had been a private investigator for nearly 3 years. However, when Michael saw James's tense jaw and deep eyes, he knew this wasn't a casual catch-up. "I think you've found something," Michael said, setting down the coffee cup he was holding and leaning slightly forward. James went straight to the point. "Without pleasantries, I need you to tell me everything you can about Emma and her trainer." His voice was low, but each word carried an intensity that couldn't be ignored. Michael leaned back in his chair and let out a slow sigh. "Look, since you asked me to investigate this 15 days ago, I've gathered some information." He paused, carefully observing his old friend's reaction. "But it might not be obvious enough for you. Go on." James's tone was calm, but his knuckles tightened involuntarily. "This trainer Ryan seems professional on the surface," Michael said, pulling a folder from his briefcase. "But he has some noteworthy history. Last year, he had inappropriate behavior with a trainee, and though the matter was hushed up, it caused quite a stir in the industry." Michael opened the folder, took out a few photos, and handed them to James. The photos clearly captured Emma and Ryan's interactions outside the gym. Ryan's hand resting on Emma's shoulder and then slowly sliding down to her backside. Emma leaned toward him with a sweet smile on her face, and Ryan planted a melancholic kiss on her cheek, mere inches from her lips. "Look at the position of their hands." Michael pointed out key details. "At first glance, it seems like ordinary physical contact, but every movement carries ambiguity. And look at Emma's reaction. She has no intention of avoiding it." James examined the photographs one by one, his expression growing increasingly grim. Each photo was like a sharp knife slicing away at the last bit of trust he had in his wife. "What else?" His voice was unusually calm. "I also checked out the gym," Michael said, sipping his now cold coffee. "Ryan is indeed professional, at least on the surface. But his interactions are full of subtle insinuations, eye contact, fleeting physical touches, and those ambiguous smiles. Especially, Emma seems to enjoy it all." James's face was darkening, but his voice remained astonishingly calm. "That's not all. Emma's going to California in 2 days. She said she was going to see her friend Claire, but I found 2 tickets, and one of them had Ryan's name on it. She made up a story about group fitness activities and discounts, but I don't buy it." Michael raised an eyebrow. "You've got good reasons to be suspicious. This trip doesn't seem straightforward." James leaned forward with a low, tense voice. "She took $160,000 in cash from our joint account." Michael's eyes widened at the figure. $160,000 in cash. That's not a vacation budget. He thought for a moment. California could be a good opportunity to catch her in the act. "If they misbehave in any way, I can record it all." James nodded with a cold glint in his eyes. "That's what I need. Undeniable proof. It's the only way to make her realize what she's done." He paused, and an almost imperceptible smile appeared at the corners of his lips. "Another thing that might interest you, I replaced the money she took with counterfeit bills." Michael laughed, surprised. "What does that mean?" "Consider it a little lesson learned," James said. "She can keep using her credit card to pay for hotels and other expenses. But that cash must have had a special purpose for her. It'll be a fun surprise to remind her that betrayal comes at a price." Michael leaned back in his chair and looked thoughtfully at his old friend. "You've changed, James. The old you wouldn't have done this." "Maybe." James's gaze grew distant. "But when you find out the people closest to you are weaving a web of lies right in front of you, you realize some things will never be the same again." From the coffee shop, James went straight to a lawyer's office. He had long scheduled an appointment with Daniel, a lawyer known for handling high-stakes matrimonial cases. James had a complete plan in mind. When he entered his lawyer's office, he wanted to ensure every step was precise and left no opportunity for anyone to counter. It wasn't just about preparing a divorce proceeding, but about a well-planned revenge. And now, all the pieces were in place, waiting for the California trip to reveal the final truth. The sun was setting when James left the law firm, but he knew the real storm had only just begun. When Emma stood in front of their house, ready to leave, the sunlight poured over her shoulders. She carried a suitcase full of newly bought items for the vacation, her face radiant with undisguised enthusiasm. At that moment, James was on the porch, playing the role of what should be a perfect husband, with a decent smile on his face. "Be careful on the road, honey," James said softly, accepting the embrace his wife gave him. The hug reminded him of the first year they met, when every touch was filled with sincerity. And now, the embrace that once quickened his heart only made him feel a strange coldness. Emma gave him a gentle kiss on the cheek. "I'll miss you." Her voice was light and quick, as if she didn't notice the sadness deep in her husband's eyes. James's smile faded as he watched his wife's car turn the corner. He immediately pulled out his phone and sent Michael a brief message. "Start the operation." Meanwhile, Michael was already waiting at the San Francisco airport. He followed Emma at a distance as she dragged her suitcase out of the arrivals hall. As an experienced private investigator, he immediately noticed that Emma was looking toward the exit, clearly waiting for someone. Soon, Ryan appeared, and their reunion seemed overly warm. The first hug they shared went well beyond a normal social distance. Michael reported to James in a phone call later that night, "And I noticed their fingers intertwined inadvertently as Ryan helped her with her luggage. That's never the kind of interaction that should happen between regular friends." Over the next 2 days, Michael closely monitored all their movements. On the surface, everything was as Emma had said. She participated in some physical activities and spent a lot of time at the beach. But Michael keenly caught all the subtle details. "They kept their distance in public," Michael continued. "But you could tell their eye contact changed whenever they thought no one was watching. Ryan was always looking for an opportunity to get closer to her, and Emma, consciously or unconsciously, created moments to be alone with him. In the afternoon of the third day, Michael sent a set of even more disturbing photos. The pictures showed Emma and Ryan talking in a secluded corner of a Santa Monica beach, their bodies in an ambiguous position. They thought no one could see them, Michael wrote in the caption. But from my perspective, I can clearly see them interacting. Just as James was looking at the photos, Emma's call came in. Honey, her voice sounded a bit tired. I have some not so good news. Claire had an accident. She slipped at the pool and badly sprained her ankle. I can't leave her here alone, so I might need to stay a few more days to take care of her. James chuckled softly, with a feigned sweetness in his voice. Of course, darling, I completely understand. You're doing the right thing, taking such good care of your friend. Stay as long as you need. Right after hanging up, James contacted Michael. She just told me she's staying a few more days to take care of Claire, who's injured. Interesting. There was sarcasm in Michael's voice. From what I've seen, Emma hasn't seen anyone named Claire in the past few days. In fact, she and Ryan are practically inseparable. Just an hour ago, I overheard them in the hotel lobby talking about renting a yacht. They plan to find a secluded cove and enjoy some uninterrupted time. James remained silent for a moment, unconsciously tapping his fingers on the desk. Keep following them. I want to know every detail. On the fourth day, Michael's report was more detailed. He captured images of Emma and Ryan getting cozy by the hotel pool, as well as photos of them holding hands while sharing a meal. The most disturbing thing is that Ryan went into Emma's room that night and didn't leave until the next morning. I've gathered enough evidence, Michael said. Judging by their interactions, it's clearly not the first time. Do you want me to keep tracking? James was sitting in his home office, with all the photos and drives Michael had sent spread out before him. Each photo was like a sharp knife cutting through the last shroud of their 10-year marriage. The moonlight streaming through the window cast a cold glow over the desk, illuminating the determination in his eyes. No need, Michael. James's voice was surprisingly calm. I know everything I need to know. Now it's time to execute the next step of the plan. James hung up the phone, opened his laptop, and checked his bank account. He knew Emma's carefully planned perfect vacation would take its first unexpected turn when she tried to use the money that had been replaced with counterfeit bills. And that was just the beginning. The night grew deeper on the other side of the world. But for James, the curtain of vengeance had only just begun to rise. As the night progressed, James remained seated in his office with Michael's latest batch of photos before him. Each one clearly documented his wife's betrayal as his plan unfolded step by step. At that moment, Michael's phone rang again. You should know what they've planned for today. Emma and Ryan have rented a yacht and are preparing to set sail tomorrow. From what I've seen, they plan to spend 2 full days at sea. Apparently, that's the real reason Emma made up the excuse about Claire being injured. James's fingers tapped the desk. Is everything they do under your watch? Yes, and I found some interesting details. Michael lowered his voice. They took special care in planning this trip. They obviously didn't want to leave any trace. Emma insisted on paying the yacht rental deposit in cash, but I calculated it was a small amount, and she hasn't started using those counterfeit bills yet. Hearing the word money, a grimace appeared at the corner of James's lips. He knew his carefully laid trap was about to spring. Early the next morning, James began executing his plan. First, he contacted his bank and formally froze the account he shared with Emma. Then he called his lawyer, Daniel, to confirm the final details of the divorce papers. All the evidence has been verified, Daniel said. Photos, videos, call logs, and bank transaction details. We have comprehensive proof of her misconduct. Just as James was about to make his next move, an emergency call from Michael came in. There was a masked smile in his voice. You'll never guess what just happened. James uttered only one word faintly. Speak. Emma and Ryan went to the most exclusive jewelry store on the coast. Michael's voice carried a hint of glee. She wanted to buy Ryan an expensive watch and pay for it in cash. And you know what? The clerk realized right away it was counterfeit money. James gripped the phone tightly and listened intently to what followed. Things are spiraling out of control, Michael continued. The store manager called the police. You should have seen their faces. Especially when the cops asked to check all the money Emma was carrying. The $160,000, all in fake bills. Ryan went pale on the spot, like he'd seen a ghost. James pressed on. And then what? The police started questioning where the money came from. Emma made up a story about a bank withdrawal, but the police obviously weren't convinced. The best part was Ryan's reaction. He immediately distanced himself from Emma, apparently afraid of being implicated. James closed his eyes and pictured the scene. He knew this was just the beginning, and more blows awaited them. One more thing, Michael added. The police asked them to cooperate with the investigation. Apparently, possessing such a large amount of counterfeit money is no small matter. Their yacht plans went out the window. Just then, James's phone received a message from Emma. There's been an accident. I need your help. He looked at the message but had no intention of responding. In the hours that followed, James began putting the final phases of his plan into action. He contacted a moving company and arranged for them to take all his belongings the next day. Then he sent an email to the real estate agency to confirm the listing of the house. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Daniel asked over the phone. "Once you start, there's no turning back." "I'm quite sure." James's voice was unusually firm. She chose to betray, and she must face the consequences. That same night, Michael sent a final report. Emma and Ryan were questioned by the police for 4 hours. Though she was eventually released, the police reserved the right to continue investigating the case. Plus, the incident has caught the attention of local media. "Ryan is completely panicking," Michael said. "I overheard him arguing with someone on the phone, clearly worried about his career. After all, I doubt a fitness instructor caught in a counterfeiting case would have an easy time staying in business." James sat in the living room that would soon be empty, observing the space filled with memories. The wedding photos were still hanging on the wall, but the people in them had become so unfamiliar. He picked up his phone and checked his bank account to ensure the balance had been transferred. At that moment, Michael sent another message. "Ryan just booked the earliest flight out of California. It looks like he plans to leave Emma behind and flee alone." James set the phone down and walked to the window. The moonlight was still clear and cold, but his heart no longer felt the initial pain. Now, the only thing he felt was a strange calm. He knew that when Emma returned home, a completely changed world awaited her, and it was all the result of her own choices. In the silence of that night, James finally realized that sometimes the cruelest punishment isn't others' revenge, but the bitterness of self-inflicted suffering. He looked at the unanswered pleas for help on his phone and knew the night had only just begun for Emma. On her final night in California, Emma couldn't stop tossing and turning in her hotel room. The romantic sea trip she had planned had turned into a nightmare, and the bundle of counterfeit bills not only ruined her plan but planted a seed of unease in her heart, even harder for her to accept. It was Ryan's behavior when the police began questioning him. He immediately adopted an air of nonchalance, as if their intimate relationship had never existed. And now she learned that Ryan had booked the earliest flight to leave the next day. He didn't even say goodbye in person, only sending a brief message. "Sorry, I can't let this ruin my career. Please don't contact me again." The man she had given everything for chose the most cowardly escape in the face of crisis. An even greater blow awaited Emma the next morning when she dragged her weary body through the door. As soon as she pushed it open, a strange sensation hit her. An unnatural emptiness pervaded the house, like a hollow shell. Her steps halted in the middle of the living room. James's belongings were gone. His favorite books were missing from the shelves, and the photo of them together on the wall was still there, but felt unusually stark. She rushed upstairs and opened the closet. James's clothes, shoes, everything was gone. Panic began to spread through her mind. Emma shakily pulled out her phone and dialed James's number. The phone rang for a long time before he answered, with a voice surprisingly calm but with a coldness she had never heard before. "Welcome home, Emma," James said. "I have 2 things to tell you." Her heart nearly stopped. First, in 1 hour, a courier will deliver the divorce papers. Emma felt her legs give way and had to grab the wall for support. What are you talking about?" Second, James continued as if he hadn't heard her question. "In 2 hours, the real estate agent will come to see the house. I've decided to put it up for sale." "You can't." Emma's voice began to tremble. "How can you make these decisions without my consent? Like when you planned your trip to California without my permission." James's voice was laced with sarcasm. "Or, are you going to explain where those $160,000 in counterfeit bills came from?" The words hit Emma like a hammer. Suddenly, she understood everything. "It was you. You switched that money. I'm glad you finally figured it out." James's tone remained calm. "By the way, every minute you and Ryan spent in California was recorded. Photos, videos, everything. I'm sure the judge will find these proofs very interesting. You sent someone to follow me." Emma's voice was filled with disbelief. "How could you? I trusted you so much." A sneer of contempt came from the other side of the phone. "How ironic, the one who betrayed me is now talking about trust," James said sharply. "Emma, I can explain, double quotes. "No need," he interrupted. "It's over. Prepare the divorce papers. The lawyer will arrive soon." The phone abruptly disconnected. Emma frantically redialed, but the call went to voicemail. She stood frozen on the floor, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. At that moment, the doorbell rang. The courier delivered a thick envelope of documents. Emma trembled as she opened it and saw the detailed divorce petition. The document listed all the evidence of her betrayal, intimate photos of her with Ryan, transcripts of their conversations, itineraries, and even the lies she had made up. Just as she tried to make sense of it all, her phone received a message from an unknown number. It was Ryan. "Sorry, I've gone back to Europe. This could ruin my career, and I can't take any more risks. Please don't contact me again." Emma stared at the message and felt the world crumbling beneath her feet. The adventure she had given everything for vanished under the weight of the truth. and all the lies she had so carefully woven were now evidence against her. The doorbell rang again. This time, it was the real estate agent. Emma could do nothing but stand frozen as the woman in a suit entered and began appraising the house with expertise. The perfect family she had once been so proud of was disintegrating bit by bit before her eyes. Emma sat alone in her empty living room in the early afternoon. She tried to access her bank account and discovered her privileges had been revoked. Then she realized James had not only taken his personal belongings but had also cut off all her financial resources. The setting sun streaming through the window cast its last rays on the wedding photo hanging on the wall. In that photo, they were so young, so in love, and full of hope for the future. And now, that smiling bride had become a stranger, crushed by her own lies. At that moment, Emma finally realized she had lost not only a marriage but the most important trust and dignity in her life. And she had ruined it all with her own hands. As night fully enveloped the house, she sat alone in the darkness, facing the storm that was coming. She knew this was only the beginning, and tougher trials awaited her. The air in the courtroom was heavy and oppressive when Emma entered. The elegant confidence she once had was gone. She lowered her head, trying to avoid the curious stares from the gallery. Right across, James and his lawyer, Daniel, had been seated for a while, with stacks of papers neatly arranged before them. Emma glanced furtively at James. He looked calmer than ever, in his suit with a resolute gaze. The man she had lived with for 10 years seemed so foreign. At that moment, when their eyes met in the air for the first time, she saw absolute indifference in those eyes. The judge signaled for the court to open. Daniel stood and began presenting his evidence. As the evidence was presented, Emma felt like she was in a nightmare. She watched the surveillance video playing on the large screen, her intimate interactions with Ryan outside the gym, their private moments on the California beach, even the kiss she thought no one knew about. Each frame was like a sword piercing what remained of her dignity. These photographs and videos clearly document the defendant's misconduct. Daniel's voice echoed in the room. But that's not all. We have further proof of the defendant's deception. The next piece of evidence was even more shocking. Bank statements showing the large sums of money she withdrew, her correspondence with Ryan, and even recordings of her making up excuses about Claire's injuries. All the lies were exposed to the sunlight, naked for all to see. A murmur rippled through the room when the police report about the counterfeit money incident was presented. Emma felt her face burn. That incident not only dishonored her in California but became irrefutable proof of her deceitful behavior. We asked the court to consider the nature of the defendant's deception. Daniel continued. This was not a momentary transgression but a series of carefully planned deceptions. Every step of the way, from the initial lies to the illegal withdrawal of marital assets to the attempts to conceal the defendant's whereabouts, shows deliberate betrayal. When Emma's lawyers tried to defend her, the words seemed so feeble. All the evidence was real and undeniable. She looked at James, hoping to find a hint of hesitation in his eyes, but his gaze remained fixed on the judge, as if she had become a stranger. Even more despairing was the news about Ryan. Daniel presented the court with an investigation report on Ryan's career. Not only had he lost his job at the gym after the counterfeit money incident, but he also faced multiple ethical investigations. Reports indicated he had left the city and returned to his home in Eastern Europe. The man she had fallen for chose the most cowardly flight in the face of crisis. When the judge announced the verdict, Emma was too numb to hear the details. All she knew was that she had lost nearly all their shared assets, her proud social status, and the respect of everyone. After the trial, James stood on the courthouse steps, feeling the emptiness of his victory. He had won his case and obtained justice, but the wounds inside him couldn't heal. Flashes of the past 10 years ran through his mind. Their first date, their wedding, the future they had planned together. All the good memories were shrouded in the shadow of betrayal, never to return. As night fell, James drove alone back to his new home. There were still unpacked moving boxes piled in the room, but he no longer wanted to move them. He sat by the window and watched the city lights. The thrill of victory faded, replaced by a deep exhaustion. He pulled out his phone and saw several unread messages. Congratulations from Michael, a follow-up agreement from his lawyer, and an apology from Emma. He didn't click on any of them. Over the next year, James tried to restart his life. He moved to a new apartment, focused on work, and gradually established a new trajectory in his life. But on some quiet nights, when he was alone, those unhealed wounds still ached, and Emma paid the price for her betrayal. She had to move out of the grand house she had once been so proud of and began facing life's burdens alone. She tried to contact Ryan, but all she got was a disconnected number alert. Her social circle shrank drastically, and her old friends started distancing themselves from her. On an ordinary afternoon in a coffee shop, James came across a small news article in the paper. Ryan had opened a gym in a small Eastern European town, trying to start over. The news reminded him of that fateful vacation, the evidence of betrayal, Emma's desperate eyes in the courtroom. He closed the newspaper and looked at the sun through the window. In the end, the thrill of revenge was short-lived and left only scars that even time couldn't fully erase. He understood there are no true winners in this war of marriage. He gained justice but lost the feelings he once cherished. She suffered the punishment but lost trust and respect forever. Life goes on, but some things change forever.
Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, it's easy and fast.